this demo, we're going to go over one more sound technique for making an interactive space in Godot, which is what do you do if you want to have a sound that moves around the scene? I know that one of you was working on an animation of a plane that flies around you. So if you have an animation that you've built in Blender and you bring that object into the scene, the sound is not necessarily going to follow that object. There is a way to kind of put it in there by exporting it as a local scene, but we're going to go over using a pre-made animation in Blender and then adding a Godot animation in it as well. So here we have the scene that we just saw in VR. Zoom out for a second. We're inside this weird tower, this strange world, and inside it you can see we have just like some stuff on the floor. We've got a light, we've got the thing we can pick up, and then more importantly, we have this kind of combination of things here where you can see we have this kind of weird triangle thing that flutters around. It's got a sound node in it, and then it also has a light attached to it. So we're going to go over how we animate all that stuff. So for starters, I'm actually going to clear that out of the scene. So I will delete all those items from the scene. Right, so delete that from the scene entirely. And we'll close down the player. We have this GLB that we're using as our space, and that's this place with kind of like these tall ceilings and all that. So I'm just going to hide that so we can see what we're doing, and then you can see we have our space. And I've set up some collisions around the edges so I can't fall off into space while I'm going. You know, looking at this, I might actually make it again without the world outside. So one thing I see, by the way, which is just a little technical issue, is you can see that the sky, it looks really bad. I don't know how else to put it. Let's see if we can improve that a little bit. So here's our sky PNG file. We'll go to import. It's set to VRAM compressed right now. Let's set it to lossless, re-import. And tiny bit of improvement, but I think I just need a higher res picture there. So I'm actually going to go ahead and set it to lossy. See how much worse it gets. That looks a lot worse. Okay, leave that on lossless, and then let's move on. So with this import setting, there's some other things we need to do. So we have our model, our GLB file, and then we also have our sound. So here's my sound file here, and you can see in the import sections, by default, the loop setting will actually be off. So you want to turn that on and then click re-import so the track loops. That's going to be really important, and you need to set that there. I have this directional light, which I'm actually not using in the scene, so I'm going to delete that too. And now we're going to get to it. So I've already set up my GLB in this file as a scene. So I'm going to go ahead and add another one into the scene for a moment, just so you can see how this works. So I'm going to just add this one in here, scroll up, and just drop it right into the scene. There it goes. Oh, it keeps opening. So here we have it. It's called Thunder. And we can just drag it right into the scene as a GLB, and it sort of treats it like it's a scene. I'll pick it up so you can see it clearly. It sort of treats it like a scene. Nothing happens when we press. Oh, that's a different animation track. It sort of looks like it's a scene, but if we actually check the scene, it kind of gives us the option to open it anyway, create a new inherited scene. And I want to do it a little differently. So we're going to go ahead and delete that from our scene right now. And then here where it says Thunder GLB, I'm just going to take note of that. And here for the scene, I'm going to do new inherited scene. And I'm going to choose Thunder GLB as my scene. So even though we can turn it into a scene, it's kind of confusing because it won't actually be in your project. So we want to actually make it an inherited scene first. So press open. Now we have it as an inherited scene. And this actually does have an animation track on it, which I'm going to set this button here is autoplay. You can see if I play it, kind of rotates around a little bit. And it occasionally just kind of pops open like popcorn. Let's see, here it comes. Yeah, to the vibration of a thunder sound. I'll make a separate video of how you can sync these drivers to sounds to make animations that are kind of like little sound visualizers. So anyway, that's there. That worked. We edited that by looking at the animation player. All we have to do here, though, is just press Control S and make sure we're saving it in the top folder. Save. And now here you can see we have Thunder GLB, but we also have Thunder Scene. And going back to the main, we can drag that scene in. But we actually aren't going to drag that scene in. We're going to drag this one called Tryfish. So I'll drag that into main. And there it is, right there. It looks kind of washed out because it's got this spotlight shining right on it. So now this is a scene, and we can click here. Oh, whoops. It's giving me this error because I brought in the GLB by accident. There we go, Tryfish scene. Drag that right onto the main root, and there it is. And it's a scene, so when we click edit, or this little edit scene button, we get right in there. And there's a scene. So here we can see this has tons and tons of stuff in it. So we don't want to make this local because it's just going to be really distracting looking at all these different little shapes. If we get down to the bottom for the animation player, we can see that it also has tons of animation tracks built into it. Now, when I exported this from Blender and I merged the animations, I added the word loop, which is in another tutorial, but that's really important. So this thing will just be a looping animation. Now, what won't be on by default is this button right here for autoplay. You want to turn that on. Now we can press play. We can see that the animation within this, it just goes. So that looks good. So I'll hit pause, and I'll just hit Control S, save the changes to the scene, which was activating the animation. Now I can go ahead and close that, go back to our main scene. So in our main scene, I'm going to take this, and because it's just an external object, I can move this around and rotate it, and it's kind of like in Blender having an animation follow something that's parented. So here I'm going to have this so it just goes close to the floor. So these, well, before I had it going into the floor, this time I'm going to have it mounted a little higher. So the little sort of triangle particles will just disappear before they get to the floor. Now that I have that set up, I'm going to look at this straight down on the y-axis and move this little thing right here. And we're going to actually set up an animation on it now. So we've got this set, and right here on Tryfish, I'm going to press Control A, and I'm going to type animation, and here we have an animation player, and we will create that. And we'll create a new animation within it, and we'll just call it try, doesn't matter. And here we have it, and by default, you can see the animation is really short. It's just a second, but we have a little timer here, so I'm going to set it to be 9 seconds. Or let's get crazy here, 15 seconds. So now you can see we've got a timeline that just keeps going for 15 seconds. So that's good. That's good. Now we're going to actually just set up some really basic keyframes on this, and you'll see that it works really similarly to basic animation in most programs, Blender included. So I'm going to put the triangle here, and you'll notice it's not rotating or anything, but the rotating is built into the scene. So we just need to have it move around the scene. So looking at it straight from the top, I'm going to open up the transform control, and you can see above each of the transforms, there's these little keys. So I'm going to double click on this key, and now it asks me if I want to create a track. We can create a Bezier curve track, which will kind of have a smooth flow to it. I just want this to loop, so I don't need that. So I'll hit create, and there we do. There we go. We got our first point. So now I'll just scrub forward on the timeline to about here. We'll move this thing over here maybe. I'm not really moving it in an exact circle or square or anything like that. Double click on that key again. There, got a new keyframe. We can move it here. New keyframe. Oh, whoops. forgot to set the timeline forward. So here, we'll put it back here. Set a new keyframe. Let's make sure this looks good. Yep. Now we'll go forward in time. Move our mesh here. Set a keyframe. Move our mesh here. One more time, and you can see because it has a keyframe in there already. So now set a keyframe there. And then for our final keyframe, we can actually replicate the first one. So I'll click that first keyframe, I'll press Control D. Or I guess that keyframe doesn't work. That shortcut doesn't work the same way. So I'll right click on it and do duplicate key. There it is. We'll move this little duplicate over to the end so that our animation loops. We'll turn on the looping function. We'll turn on the autoplay function. Now we can hit play, test our 15-second animation. And there it goes. It looks pretty good. And I really like how that shadow offsets differently as it goes. So I probably dim that light a little bit so that we got an animation there. Could be a little better, but I think it's still pretty good. That line at the end, that implies that it's not having any motion there. So I'm going to take this keyframe here and delete it. And that should give us a smoother animation. All right. So now I'm going to just save my scene, and we're almost there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select Try Fish again and press Control A. This time I'm going to add a light. And I did a spotlight before. I'll do that again. So here, I'll add a spotlight. And there we have it. And we can see right away if we play the animation, it moves with it because the light is attached. So again, it's just like basic parenting going on. So we take that spotlight and I'm going to rotate that. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis, negative 90 degrees. So it's pointing down. And I like how it creates like a nice little shadow of these little triangle things. And now in the spotlight settings, I'm going to narrow the angle a little bit. I'm also going to go ahead and have it start a little lower. There. And we can see that it's going way below the floor. So we can actually tweak the distance with these red dots here. So I'll bring that up. It kind of gives you the same volume cone no matter what. So here with the range, so I was looking for distance, we can shorten that. We don't need the light really going through the floor. So I think that looks good. And we can see this extra shadow is created. And then we can also go to the attenuation and make the light kind of more blurry. And so we can see the light a little more clearly. I'm going to go ahead and turn up the other light in the scene so you can really see it. There it is. I'm going to go above the whole model a little bit, increase the range so you can see that light shining down. And I'm also going to go ahead and give it a little bit of color to it, make it kind of green so you can really see that it's different. And then maybe with the other spotlight, select that. Might turn the attenuation way down on that, so it's kind of a softer light in the scene. I think that looks pretty good. So now you can see that when we play, light is going to move with the object. So almost there, almost at the end. Last thing we need to do is add our sound. So here we'll find our MP3, and you can drag all your assets in, obviously, and we'll drag that right onto our fish again. And for that, I'm going to actually turn the volume down a little bit. I think it was a little too loud. We're going to turn on autoplay. Now, if we want to just test it here, we can turn on playing. Up or down. Also change the pitch, which is kind of cool. I don't know why I'd want to do that. But I suppose you can animate the pitch, which is kind of neat. Reset the volume a little bit. Now I turn off playing here because we don't need that. It'll just start playing in the scene. So that's pretty much it. So we got that all set up. We've got a sound attached to our light. Hit save, and we can test this real quick. See the object flying around us.